Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the video version of the Tone Mob podcast. Today I am talking to my dude, Charlton Moore of Franklin Strap. Now this dude has a very unique story, and I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but let's just say he has spent his career traveling to guitar stores, like literally just driving there and talking to people face to face, one-on-one, selling really nice guitar straps. Now that might sound kind of weird, and honestly, in this day and age, it is, which is exactly why I wanted to get him on here to tell his story. It's very unique. He's a super cool dude. He's got a great story, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. Before we dive right into it though, I wanted to remind you that this is primarily an audio podcast. So if this is your first time seeing this, just know that there are like around 400 episodes available on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your audio podcasts, it's there. So if that's more your thing the way it is mine, slide over and check it out. And I also wanted to say, if you really like this conversation, guess what? Charlton and I talked for 2 full hours extra over on Patreon. For $5 a month, you can get access to a bunch of back content, and I put more up there every single week. So thank you all to the Patreon supporters, and if you just like YouTube videos, well, let's get into it. Here's one. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff, occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weil, and with me today, I have Charlton Moore. What's going on, dude?
Hey, man, I'm, snowed in, Snowmageddon here in Nashville, Tennessee, so working from home, making capos, and doing as much as I can via email, so there you go. I appreciate you having me, man.
Well, hey, I'm glad that we were finally doing it. It was actually the fact that NAMM is next week that reminded me. It's like, wait a minute. I talked to Charlton about this at last NAMM.
That's right.
And we never made it happen. So let's do it, right?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah, speaking of NAMM, the snow really screwed up my preparations here. So fingers crossed, everything gets there and it's not an absolute bust of a show for us. So
same. Like I didn't even really think about it until I talked to Scott yesterday, and he's like, "So I'm packing the crate up, but is anybody gonna come get it? Probably not for the next couple of days, So
we shipped ours out. Like our people was like December 15th. I think it was a salesperson that wanted to get the sale in December.
Okay.
But I'm really glad I went with it. It was already there by the time, 1st of January rolled around. So
your booth is substantially more difficult to set up than ours. So.
Well, yeah. And you guys doubled the space, I think, this year, didn't I? I was looking at the show map. It looked like you had 2 of the ones that
we've always done that.
Okay.
Since we took that place. So I guess always, as in the 1 year we've done it so far. Yeah. We intentionally took the 2 spots. So
man, I love tag teaming that wall. It's fun.
I do too.
It's great. I love it. We're like, this is the Music City side.
Absolutely. Well, it was actually completely intentional on our part. We saw where you guys were, and we were like,
it makes sense.
Yeah. That looks like a good. Well, it's like it's kind of strategic in a weird way. I'm sure you already thought of this, but we're like, we can have what seems like a bigger booth without having a bigger booth.
That's right. Yeah. Well, with us, it's the type of product we have. It's like in the aisle. You can like smell it as you're walking through. Like, 100%. It just depends on what kind of product you have. Some people, if you're running a Martin booth, you want the sort of merchandising psychology to lure them in and stay for a while and hang out. And our thing is very tangible. It's a very, physical product and sort of an afterthought in a lot of ways in the context of our product category. So having it like that, it's actually pretty funny. We did it the first time we did that. It was like 8 years ago or more. And we decided to go like 3 weeks before. I mean, we were the last thing. We're like, you know what, let's do it. Call our rep. And they're like, we don't have any places. Like this was pre-COVID. So, spaces filled up. Back then, right. A lot of folks might not remember those days, but the show floor used to fill up pretty quick. And then you just couldn't show if you waited that long. And so we just decided to go at the last second. And they were like, well, we can invent a booth, like a space, like by the bathrooms and the entrance where there's usually just where Freeman, the labor union, just parks their carts. And it historically that wasn't a place. And so they're like, we'll give it to you for 20 cents on the dollar. And we were like, yeah, sure. 350 square feet, 70 feet long, 5 feet in depth. And because, it's right on the aisle, we get technically, we get a lot of the aisle, which we're not paying for. So it just kind of happens as a happy accident. So then we just kept getting it super cheap. And then it caught on and people started looking at it and they were like, well, and then we sort of branded that spot. And then now they're like, oh, it's like, it's over the average price. And they're like, well, it's a really in demand spot. I'm like, we made it in demand.
You're like, yeah, I know.
We were like, yeah, we did that. Yeah, we did that. And because, all the people doing it now, they weren't there back then. So they don't, it's not like you can grandfather, that in
they don't
too
care.
long, but
yeah, they don't care that much.
They don't care. No,
they
have bills to pay.
It's true. It's true. And we pay them.
We do indeed.
But I wanted to get your story. I know Charlton from Franklin Strap, but I know that there's more to that story. It's this weird kind of connection we have because Scott was talking to me about you way back in the day, but back when him and I had just recently became business partners, and he was like, oh, you got to meet Charlton. You got to meet Charlton.
Yeah, we linked up a long time ago. I love Scott. Scott's fantastic.
He told me your story in like kind of a secondhand way, but I wanted to get it from you because, you were road dogging for a strap company for how many years? Which
you don't see that. You don't see that
I've never heard of it.
And not a capo company, a capo.
A capo.
Like a singular capo. Doesn't come in 4 colors. It's just like one thing, which is, if you think about it, the most perfectly branded thing ever. It's one thing that does a thing that doesn't come in any variants, and it's just the thing. And that's the genius. I can't take credit for that. That's the genius of my late mentor, Greg Bennett. But
I want to talk about that whole story. How did this unfold for you? Obviously, you play guitar. You started playing at some point. Let's start from there.
Piano and guitar. I went to music school. I'm a theory nerd. I'm a composer. Also, you can look up Charlton Moore, and it's a unique name, so all my streams pop right up. And so I work. I also own a music publishing company, so I pitch music for sync licensing and so forth. A lot of it. 90% of which is.
Why is this the first time I'm hearing this? This is
well, it's because we're all doing it, we're all doing it. And so I guess what I bring to the table in a unique fashion would be guitar accessories and sales and branding. But, we're all making music, but
true.
When I went to shot at Conservatory School of Music in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is a part of the UTC and the University of Tennessee, group of four schools. One of them is Chattanooga. And so I left music school and then came back to Nashville. I grew up around Nashville. My dad was a songwriter my whole life. And Chattanooga is only 2 hours away. So, it's not like I was super far away or anything, but I moved back home after school and just started doing the thing, just did the typical, get into bands, and which being classically trained took me, that was actually very difficult. I think I didn't really have a peer that could have walked me through that transition. It was actually very difficult to actually play in bands after a strictly classical music school.
Interesting. What were the struggles there?
Well, it's just, you grow up in like high school and so forth, and you're playing in bands and, playing in mom's garage and stuff like that. And we used to play at Cafe Express in Mount Juliet. And that was in church, which is always in the South, is like where 90% of musicians start playing live is probably church. And, you go to school and it's very, I think the number one thing would be the communication. there's this thing called the Nashville number system down here,
Mm-hmm.
and it's absolute blasphemy that should have never been invented from the get-go. But you're forced to start talking, you're the language, it's the communication factor, I think. And most people don't understand, nor really should they. And, with age, you start figuring it out. But first couple of years out of college, it was really difficult to rehearse and communicate and find my place. Like, what is my role? What can I bring to the table that's unique? And so forth. And, what's called an applied study, which is what you have to have in a music school, which is an instrument that you're focusing your degree on, essentially. So if you're music education, for instance, then you have to have an applied study, so clarinet or piano, or guitar, or whatever. Okay. So mine was, unless you're if you're a performance major, then it's built in. It's whatever your instrument is your performance degree. But I did theory and composition. So uniquely, I had to, thankfully my first instrument was piano. So I, breezed through that, thank God. The sight reading and so forth definitely took me a minute, but and guitar was ended up being my applied study. And I learned under Dr. Mario Abril, a Cuban composer, and very terrifying and intimidating man. And it was a heck of an experience. It's boot camp. I mean, it really is a very tough thing to go through. And they go out of their way to credit each class like 1 hour. So you end up taking like 8 classes a semester. You end up taking double the amount of classes like an English major or something. And it's all that was very difficult. But anyways, all that to say, spending 12 hours a day every day for 4 years in ensembles and communicating with people that communicate like you do, and then moving to Nashville and then trying to communicate with people that communicate the exact opposite, essentially, mm-hmm. and with a lot of pre-assumptions that you don't have. It'd be different if you go to MTSU down here and go to the jazz school, or Belmont, go to a jazz school or something like that. It's all that's fine. That's an easy transition. But I was sort of dashed on the rocks right away. I was like, all right, I'm going to, I got on a couple tours and started a couple bands, set in on a couple of bands, and just kind of did that. But honestly, I just was not, that wasn't my calling. That's not where I was going to be. And then I'm an old man. So, as technology moved on, when you're going to school, everybody's saying, what are you going to do? You're going to teach? Well, first of all, there's nothing wrong with teaching, but, as technology, progressed, ways to do what we do and monetize it were invented out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. Like being, building gear in your home and being able to record, 80% to the quality of a big band studio is life-changing. And absolutely. So, yeah. And then it's also runs parallel with with video creation. The budgets on video creation got lower because of YouTube, and the new cable TV is lower budget, more volume, instead of like 4 major networks with a monopoly on everything. Mm-hmm. Same thing with movie production, film production, and advertising. It's not just a few firms. It's not just a few studios. It's literally anyone can do it. And then public libraries, music libraries became a thing. So I thank God that I felt so at home with that. So I can sit in my house and write and record in the studio for the rest of I never have to play a gig again, and I will be so content. I'm dead serious. I enjoy the writing and arranging and composing just infinitely more. Anyways, so
I agree. I've actually never played a gig.
Is that right? Oh man. Ever. Well, these days you don't have to.
I really don't want to. Yeah. I love experiencing live music. I love going out. I mean, I guess that's not entirely true. I played like Battle of the Bands in high school.
Sure.
If that counts. Yeah. But I've never went out.
It counts. Yeah, absolutely.
I never went out and like intentionally sought out a public performing gig. I don't really care to do that myself. I love, with a passion, being in the studio, and I love going out and watching bands play
Yeah.
and watching artists perform.
Yeah.
I just don't have that same desire to be doing that myself for some reason. I don't know why.
Right.
I'm not scared of it. I could go up and public speak all day. That's not an issue.
Right.
I just don't care to. I don't know why. I don't know what it is.
It didn't resonate. It's not that I don't enjoy. I actually do. Every now and again, I have to scratch the itch, but really, it's just not. That's not really where I felt at home. I was always like I said, I studied composition, so I was always more of a composer and arranger, and so forth. So I rarely write anything ahead of time, and then like plan to then go into the studio and record it. I sit down and I'm writing and tracking at the same time, everything, which is so much. That's unheard of 15 years ago, 20 years ago. That didn't happen because you can't spend $1,000 for a few days in the studio and not come out with anything, right? And so
Right.
our ability to be to have full control over your creative process is really it invented ways of monetizing passion that didn't exist ahead of time. So anyway, so I started doing all that. And I started going to grad school eventually, and this gentleman named Greg Bennett, which folks might have seen his name on a headstock or two. He's got an incredible resume. He's been the vice president of Guitar Center, and he ran Washburn several times, and he was marketing manager at Gibson, and ran Bruno, which is an old school distribution company. He started Prairie State Strings a long time ago, which was a big deal in stores. Anyways, he's a merchandising expert in the guitar world, which is then and a guitar designer. He was a product designer first and foremost, and I sort of got an apprenticeship under him, sort of learning under him, which is life-changing. I mean, it's like, to me, he's the, Steve Jobs or Elon Musk of our industry. I mean, he's one of those guys, which is incredibly famous in just our tiny little MI industry and nowhere else, which is really funny how that can happen. And because he spent an entire career physically going into stores, whether it was for Ovation or Tascam or Washburn, or visiting the stores of the Guitar Center chain, or Samick, or doing his Greg Bennett design clinics and so forth. I mean, he literally wrote the training manual for Guitar Center employees. So his expertise is merchandising within the space of a physical retail store, which is really the beginning of Franklin Strap. So, and Glider Capo, but specifically Franklin Strap. You want to say I want to come to the table and say it's some sexy beginning where we bought a $50 sewing machine and a cowhide and figured it out. We invented this new way to do things, blah, 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 blah. That's not really our contribution to our product category. We're a little bit more unorthodox in the sense that we were, the world didn't need another guitar strap line. Like why would you, it's everybody does it. They're everywhere, especially with imports now and Amazon. They're flooded. The market is flooded with every kind of guitar strap you can find. So we were created the way you would think if you knew Greg Bennett, and that is a smart, comprehensible way to help the stores specifically. So, and what do I mean by that? It's the catalog isn't overinflated. For instance, the largest guitar lines have 3,000 SKUs and 100 bestsellers. A lot of the way about their business is going to textile trade shows and backpack companies and shoe companies, and then finding their discontinued textiles, buying a football field of it, making 1,000 straps, and then blow them out to the dealers, and then when they're out of stock, it's discontinued. And what that ends up what that ends up doing to the public is the paradox of choice, which is where you have 7 shades of green and one of them actually sells. And you have an overinflated inventory, so it's harder for stores to track turn through and the actual validity behind each SKU. Like, did that sell because it was next to these other two? Did it sell? Like, you don't know where the merit comes from on the turn through in terms of the psychology of merchandising within a store. So Greg Bennett was an expert at purchasing products for stores. So he invented a line that was focused, made in the US, and focused on the turn through, the sort of turn and burn theory of retail sales. And that's uniquely possible with a guitar strap line because it's not really a destination piece. No one walks into a store saying, "Hey, I'm here for a guitar strap." It's usually, where are the slinkies and then, or just getting a setup or a lesson, and they're walking out and they're like, "Oh, well, that's cool. Yeah, you know what? I do need one of those." And it's the Snickers at the Mapco. Yep. So to speak, but it's always been looked at as a commodity. And what he did was essentially turn it into an actual brand instead of a random collection of stuff. So there's a very specific branding behind it, a sort of a vision in terms of design perspective. The quality's there. It's timeless. It's not sort of frivolous to the moment of fad. And it's incredibly consistent. So we've had the same SKUs for 30 years, and it's very easy to track your inventory. Like I said, there's no 7 shades of a color. Most of our designs have like 4 options within the one design, and then each series has a different functionality. Do you want it to grab your shoulder and prevent neck dive? Do you want it slippery? Do you want it thin? Do you want it weighted and padded for distribution of weight? Do you want it's all very functional instead of here's a piece of material with 2 holes in it,
right?
Which is essentially what the industry did to the product category. So the reason our validity, our justification in a market that's already super inflated with straps is that we're the only one that makes sense in terms of a full line brand for a store. So, that being said, I started traveling with him a little bit, learn the ropes. I started off just making capos and price tagging straps in the warehouse, saran wrapping skids, going to Guitar Center and so forth. And, this is my 15th year. And of course, Greg tragically passed 3 years. It'll be 4 years this spring. And then myself and my best friend, Greg Lancaster, partnered and purchased the business from them, reincorporated it under Tonal Music Inc., which is our name now.
Got it.
And then we do the Franklin Strap Glider Capo. But, I think it was 2012 came around. We had just started this boutique guitar line called Ethan Hart Guitars, metal brand. And, it wasn't flying out the door because the economy was in shambles. And it was terrifying. And our chain and overseas business, it was about 15-20% of what it was the year before. And when you're a small business, that's the difference between a closed sign and an open sign. And
absolutely,
that's devastating. So, we essentially operated on a line of credit, bought a van, filled it up with 1,000 straps. And he says, do you want a career? And I said, yeah, I do. I'd like to go further with this. And he says, all right, well, don't come back until you have 1,000 dealers. And 5 or 6 years later, I parked the van, had 1,000 dealers, hired, reps in individual areas to maintenance the territories. But I can pretty confidently say, other than like the people doing clinics back in the day, At least I can 100% confidently say out of our generation, I've been in more guitar stores than anyone out of people under 45, probably. That was
There's probably a good chunk of people over 45 too, to be totally honest.
For sure. Well, most of the road reps are in their territories. They're not doing it continent wide, right? So, yeah, the only difference I would say was people that weren't necessarily the people doing clinics. Like the Michelangelo back in the day was like known for being the metal guy.
Yep.
That did shows in guitar stores, and that was essentially all he ever did. Or that, I don't want to say that. Of course, he sold out arenas. What I mean is that was what he mostly did. That's what our industry knew him as
on a day-to-day basis.
On a day-to-day basis, and that's what our industry knew. I mean, when I know even back then when someone brought his name up, and by the way, there's plenty of others too. I don't mean to just say him, but when somebody says his name, the first thing I think of is him, a guy selling tickets in a retail store. So those guys have probably, they do it worldwide. So that's wild, and over decades, and that's a whole other level. But yeah, 26 years old, driving to, Dubuque, Iowa,
right.
And, setting up with the Bob's House of Strings of the world and introducing them to a product they don't care about.
Yeah.
It was an uphill battle, to say the least. I believed in the theory. The thing is when I start rambling about merchandising psychology and inventory control and turn through and systems, they just, it's a collective eye roll, especially when they're 65 years old. Who's this 26-year-old guy, talking to me about inventory control? I've been doing this for 40 years. And then, and that's, of course, I still get a lot of that, but then the few, the people that listen to me and like go through the program and I earn their trust, I can't count how many times I get a call and they say, Charlton, I got to tell you, man, I've been doing this for 40 years and I feel like I'm just now in the strap business, because they have never actually felt the true customer demand, like a real consumer demand for the strap category, because of how it's been manufactured and sort of flooded in our industry and overmade. And, a lot of guitar brands, make their own straps and stuff like that, but they're not a brand. They have, it makes sense. It's an add-on for people that are brand loyalists, of course, which makes total sense. But in terms of a brand, I mean, it makes no more sense than Ford making toasters, right?
Right.
I mean, but I get it. I mean, sure. I mean, it's a good but now it's gotten to the point to where they're so addicted to that add-on. And when guitar sales go down, there's this big game of extortion where it's, in order to keep your insert big guitar brand here dealership, you have to do $2,000 a quarter in straps. That nobody from the public wants. And so they end up with warehouses full of straps. And then guys like me that are actually trying to sell a real strap brand, they're like, well, honestly, man, my inventory dollars for straps are tied up because I just can't sell these, insert big guitar brand strap here. So,
right. Because I'm forced to take it or I'm going to lose my ability to sell, large in-demand brands products.
And I have a comeback for everything. And that in my entire career is by far the most understandable complaint. They're like, yeah, I mean, you're the ex-dealer of Chicago. I mean, you've branded your entire existence in your zip code around that. Like, what do you, don't throw that away, So,
sure,
we have different tactics on trying to supplement it, but I every day I get somebody that's like, we were we were doing 400% more in straps with you guys. But I'd rather lose $15,000 a year in strap sales and, keep my, my guitar brand.
The thing that draws people.
You're right. And of course, what am I going to say to that? Like, of course you should. Yes. There's no question about it. But, so it only made sense. You can't sell guitar straps over the phone. really. You can brand leverage over the phone, like the other guys that we're explaining. But at the end of the day, in order to create sales is just relationships and language. And if you're walking into, their, it's at NAM even, you might have 5 minutes with somebody and you're screaming at them. And,
right.
And then it's over. There's no connection. There's no, and we're at the end of the day, none of us are, we're not Harvard business guys. Okay. We're guitar players that ended up with a room full of stuff and bought an open sign. Right. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. We're not, you can point at most other industries and make a connection between like store or like retail or business savvy. But, a lot of us out here just started off guitar players and then we had no business sense and we made it work and so forth. So at the end of the day, we're human and we're emotional and we're musicians and we're physical people and we have to shake hands and we have to talk gear. And, some of the best sales pitches I've ever had was 10 minutes of accessories chat and 2 hours of just nerding out,
like, whoa, look at the checking on this one.
Yeah.
Whoa,
well, I did. It just not even about our stuff, just anything. Did you hear the blah, blah, blah? Did you, whatever, check out this new Wampler, whatever it is. It's, we're all gear nerds at the end of the day. So we knew very early on that the only way to really grow this thing was to hit the road and as best as we can. And, unfortunately, we're coming full circle, to be real. I have not traveled since then. I mean, it's been years.
Well, I think you got your fill, right?
Well, I did. I did. But no one of the younger of this, like of our generation. I don't know how old you are, but I'm 30.
I'm 35.
Okay. Yeah. We're the same thing. Yeah. So I'm 37. And, so like no one from our generation is doing this, whereas everyone in the last generation they were road warriors. I mean, you had to be, in the world of payphones and, but you had to just show up to the stores and introduce brands, and physically take inventory and so forth. And so, everything was in person, but no one from our generation really does it. So all of my current reps that are on the brink of retirement or have already checked out, there's no one really to replace them with. And, if I was selling keyboards, that'd be fine. People on the phone would be fine, but it doesn't work with us. So I went on 2 trips this year. I mean, dust the cobwebs off and get out there. And I did 2 weeks across Louisiana, Texas. I'm going back through Oklahoma in a few months. And one of my guys I sent through the Midwest. So I mean, I think we're going to slowly transition back to in-house travel. It's what they say when the stream's going one way, swim uphill or swim upstream. Right. So it's we're kind of going back to it, and it's still just as potent as ever. And thankfully, we have a legitimacy and a way to talk about our brand, and we have a consumer demand because since then, I used to say, "Hi, I'm Charlton. I'll be in your area. What are you selling? Franklin Strats. I got Strats, and so but since then we've ran, if with the help in the early days, by help with your partner, Scott, helped us sort of educate us on advertisement and communicating directly to the public. And, and so, since then, we've gotten, 3,000-4,000 hits on our website a day for the last 6 years because of that. And so the public demand for our straps is extraordinary. And so for the first time I'm calling, and I'm saying, "Hey, I'm Charlton. I'm a co-owner of Franklin Strap." And they're like, "Oh, Franklin, I love Franklin. Let me get the boss." And I'm just like, whoo, this is easier than it was. I mean, man, this is great. So thankfully, we've been able to do both at the same time, sort of grow the wholesale thing and still, maintain our legitimacy with helping stores and then growing the consumer demand. So we're hitting them on both sides. It's people are walking in saying, well, why don't you have Franklin? Yeah, I have Franklin. And so that has been an amazing process. So the travel game.
It's interesting to hear the story straight from the horse's mouth, because we're now a few years into that side of the journey, right? We for a long time, and still, this is never going to.
You guys started the exact opposite, literally.
Exactly.
Which that's why I've always thought this was so much fun. That's why I love Stringjoy, because we're mirror images of each other and non-competing products. It's amazing. It's
great.
Fantastic.
We can nerd out and great. Not have to worry about.
Well, which I've done. I think I opened up your Chinese distributor, and
I believe so,
and your Brazilian distributor now, and a couple. So I go out every day. I'm telling somebody about Stringjoy. I mean,
I appreciate
I'm a
that very
cult
much.
member, man. It's all I use too. Yeah,
I appreciate that very much. But yeah, it is a very opposite. But we're trying to end up in the same place, right? Yeah. So now we don't have anyone on the road specifically, though we have definitely sent them on the road and been on the road. I mean, in my area, I visited almost every store and delivered them a pizza at some point.
Yeah, I show up with donuts and coffee. That's my ritual every time.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta get clever, man. I'll tell you a real fun story in your neck of the woods.
Okay.
Well, I thought you were in Washington State, but I think I saw your LinkedIn. It said Oregon. Are you?
Yeah, I'm in Portland, Oregon.
In Portland.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a great story.
Okay.
This is the story of how Charlton opened up Portland Music Company.
I'd love to hear this.
Back when
they're an interesting store.
Back when they had 4 stores, I think there's only 2. I don't know, but there's still.
I think there's 3.
There might be 3. Yeah, there at Beaverton and what was the one by the food trucks? That was the main one downtown.
That was the main one, and that's that one that they actually tore that building down.
That's right. That's
and they're in Milwaukee now, which is just a little bit.
That's
south.
Right. That's what it was. Yeah. Well, they're still good friends, and this was back a long time ago. And this is the kind of stuff. Look, man, if you're in sales or if you're in MI and this is a great conversation to just get pumped, because of this side of it can be daunting. There's just so many stories. Or like, I had a great idea and everybody around me wants it, and I went to NAM and sold nothing. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, like, for sure. I mean, it's amazing how, the dealer thing is very, very interesting. And there's like 3 or 4 broad personalities of buyer within our industry, not to generalize, but it really is. And understanding who those people are can help over time. But, so our biggest, competitor would be, somebody like Levy's Leathers, which is Canadian. And, they, in terms of leather volume in the United States, they're, first. They're first in volume in general, but I believe actually we actually might distribute more specifically leather in the United States now. But in general, I mean, they are like 8 times our size, so it's not even close. Like, I'm not trying to say that we're Levy's size. It's not even. It's anyways. But they a lot of their success comes from their infrastructure. So until recently, when Gator bought them a couple of years ago, their reps had been their reps for an entire career. So you're talking about guys that have been in the industry for 40 years, and one of their lines has been Levy's the whole time. So their potency within their area, you just can't penetrate that. I mean, it's I don't care who you are. That is very. It's, what do you say when you try to open somebody up and they're like, man, I was in the Levy's rep's wedding, married to my brother,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, or better sister, whatever, he's my brother-in-law or whatever. What are you going to do? It's like, all right, well, I guess I'll try back again 10 years.
You want to get married?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But anyway, so I think, who was I talking to? I was talking to one of the magazines, and guy was like, oh yeah, did you hear such and such, the Levy's rep in the Pacific Northwest is retiring. He's, 78 years old, and he's calling it a day. And I said, he's retiring, huh? And he's like, yeah. And I had a plane ticket to Portland the next morning, without a meeting at all.
Mm-hmm.
No meeting with Portland Music Company. But that was the mentality. It was like, I have always wanted this store. We are nowhere up here. I mean, we're in Washington State. We do okay. But they're the ones. I mean, they're the ones to work with. They serve their community really well. They're a huge store. Mark, the owner, is incredibly knowledgeable and has been doing it forever. And so I just flew there with no meeting at all. I was like, look, I'm just going to get out there and I'll figure it out. And I called Carrie, which was her. I think she's in real estate now, but she, finally I got her on the phone. And before this, I would call her like twice a year, and it was just a nope. We're in it with levies. And so I got out there and I told her, and I was like, look, I'm in your area. And she was like, oh, that's interesting because, our owner's like best friend is our levies rep, but he's retiring now. And I was like, oh, is he? Man, I didn't know that. That's, served the industry well. And, and so she said, well, look, I can't take a meeting with you because until or if every single one of our GMs signs off on this, because I can't, and understandably, completely, a centralized buyer has to buy things that their staffs are passionate about. I mean, you can't, that's the whole point. Why else, run a guitar store than, sell stuff that you love. So and I said, look, hey, fair enough. Fine. So I called each individual location, set up a meeting throughout the course of the week with each one, showed up to each one with, wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, coffee and donuts, and had a great time at each meeting. And then as I'm leaving, every time they're like, and mind you, they haven't had a meeting like this so personalized to them because everything's bought centrally. And probably a long time, especially with straps. So that, the attention, the camaraderie, they were all my age. Right. So it really was potent, and they, a lot of them knew who we were already. And that was great. And so I as I'm leaving, I'm like, oh, by the way, do me a huge favor, man. Sorry to make you do this, but if you could just send Carrie an email today and say, hey, the Franklin guy came by and I really want this stuff in the store. And he said, no, 100%, I will. So I let that simmer over the weekend. By the time Friday came around, I had already had all 4 meetings, and then let that sit. I don't even think I called her on Monday. I was like, I'll let her have Monday. Maybe the emails came in by then. Maybe she read them. I think it was like Tuesday afternoon. I call her and I was like, hey, so I visited her all the store, and she goes, yeah, I see that. I guess she didn't think I'd do it. Like, it'd stick around and try. And so she's like, all right, well, come on by the store and show me what you got. And we sat there. You got to vision this. I'm 26. I get out of a van with a, massive Samsonite suitcase, 2 of them, 2 suitcases. And I have one of every single model of strap we have, which is about 300. And so I'm wheeling in 2 big suitcases into the store. I open them up and we go through each one individually. And, until a few years ago, that was the largest single order I ever wrote in my life. And,
wow.
And they're still dealers today. And all it took was that, just jumping the gun, getting a plane ticket, getting out there. And then once you're there, you're forced to follow through. I mean, what else you can do?
Yeah.
Fly home.
What are you going to do? Yeah. Sit there.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I mean, although I'd love to sit and, drive up to Pike Place and eat salmon, but and it was my first time to the state of Oregon in general.
Wow. So
I was really, I say out of my element, but again, I keep coming back. I'm still hanging out with guitar players. I mean, so I'm really not out of my element in that situation. We're all very much alike in so many ways, in terms of at least we have that. connection in terms of the instrument and love of music and so forth, and stores and just being in music retail. I grew up around guitar stores. So, I went out there, and again, they're still, I think they've swapped out buyers 4-5 times since then. And they're still one of our best dealers and lovely people. And, but I've got, there's a story like that all around the country, and, that's just, at the end of the day, man, if you just give a crap and you're passionate, you're going to outwork most people. Most people give up. Most people don't put in that little bit of effort to just push you past the finish line. And I don't think an in-house rep for any accessory would have just bought a ticket, flown out there on the whim of closing the biggest chain in the Pacific Northwest. So it's just having that drive to do it is what it takes when you're selling something that's really difficult to pitch, because it's not the most emotional draw. You know what I mean? It's not a guitar. It's not the new hot pedal. It's not some innovative, noiseless, noise canceling cable, whatever. It's a strap that people have to sort of be, they have to, I always say it's the most important piece of gear you don't know you need, because, because most people don't even think about it. I grew up asking for everything for Christmas except for a strap. Well, I take that back. I wanted the Stevie Ray Vaughan strap with the eighth notes on it, but straps are just one of those afterthoughts. And then if you can just change their thinking a little bit, and it's not a malicious sort of way. It is based in truth. I mean, I see it happen every single day, and the whole brand was developed by a guy that understood this, that if we just built a strap brand based on the philosophy of what is best for a retail store, then it will be successful, rather than just relying on your infrastructure and just selling by virtue of just being in a store. Anyway, so yeah, I've got 100 stories of those from all around the country because of how long it took to actually develop the dealer network.
What I've noticed, and I'd be curious to get your take on it, is because we face a similar, I guess, problem, for lack of a better term, is that it's not the sexiest thing in the world. Yeah. We're obsessed with it,
sure,
but I understand. I mean, I even remember the first time Scott reached out to me to come on the podcast. That's how we met.
Yeah.
I literally thought to myself, "What, we're going to talk about strings for an hour?" Like,
you'd
really?
be surprised, And
then I got him on, and I've talked to him about strings literally every day since then, pretty much.
Yeah.
For almost 8 years now, whatever.
I was infuriated. I think I heard of Scott for the first time on a podcast, and it was probably yours. And I was in our warehouse, and here's this guy talking about how you can get custom gauge. Like, there's drop down menus on the website per string, and you can choose the gauge. And I was like, oh my God, I wanted someone to do this and do because no one's ever done like mail order strings. It's always, again, you have the same problem. The Ernie Balls of the world. No one is screaming for Ernie Ball straps. I'm sorry. No one really is. They sell because their infrastructure. It's the same thing with our biggest brand competitors.
Yeah.
Their infrastructure, their reps, they're leveraging the other brands that they own and products that they can leverage together. These kinds of things, there's really not branding behind it. It's just their tentacles reach very deep into our industry. And so the only place you could have gone is just, hey, here's a mail order boutique string brand. And I'm like, yes, finally. Finally, somebody's done this. I was ticked off. I didn't do it, but
it's just one of those things where it's like it's not exciting, and it's for some people it's very exciting for us, but we're super nerds, and so I've had dealers that it's not my primary thing. I'm not a salesperson really,
sure,
but I've had dealers that own stores that I considered to be friends, and I've bought a lot of stuff from that took 6 years before they started carrying us, and they knew, but it was literally like, it's not sexy. So it doesn't cross their mind, until there's a breaking point usually. And that's what we're finally seeing after all this time is the consumers are asking for them.
Yes.
And then if enough consumers keep asking for them and they don't have it, eventually they're like, you know what? I've had 4 people ask for this in the last week. I guess I need it. You know?
Greg Bennett used to call that the fear of loss. You know, and it's true. You know, if you're behind a fad, you know, your people will let you know it. I mean, look, we're prepping for NAMM right now. One of the first things I did was look up the top 100 list this year, the nominees this year, or the winners this year, I should say. And I just started going down the list, calling all of them, and just trying to invite them into the booth this year. And you know, 4 different people I talked to, the buyer was like, oh man, I own 5 Franklin straps. It's the only strap I use. And I was like, and you buy for a guitar store?
Right.
And you don't have my straps in your store, my man? Like, so like you're a brand loyalist of Franklin Strap, yet we're not good enough to be in your store? I don't get it. But I do. Dude. I do get it. Once you travel and talk to stores and you understand how they work, you start realizing what it is. And it's, you know, a lot of these big distributors, the Commands of the world and Jam and others, there used to be a lot more, but you know, they come in and they've got a 2,000 page catalog of everything you can think of. There's violin bows and reeds and grease and drum heads and strings and straps. And, you know, and the guy walks in with the catalog and it's, you know, mostly digital now, but I mean, the guy still, the same principle applies. And they say, yeah, let me get a little bit of that, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. And I don't know, throw $200 of straps on there just to fill it out. And that, you know, when you're managing 3,000 SKUs in a store, you know, taking an extra 10 minutes to fine tune just your strap inventory doesn't seem like the best use of your time on its face. And that I don't blame them for thinking that either. It's because the people that dominate our product category, and I would include strings in that, just over-the-counter accessories in general. The people that dominate those spaces in terms of manufacturers, they play into that, you know, and of course the distributors get 30 points right off the top. So the pricing is, you know, you're already losing money because of that. But, you know, they're saving them time. It's a one-stop shop. They're filling up everything. They've designed straps, in my particular case, they've designed straps to just sort of fill up space on the wall to appease the store. It's not necessarily because they want a turn through system. They don't have the same merchandising prowess and legitimacy, I believe, that we do. So their experience with strap sales is limited to just that. So why would they know any better? What their experience with strap sales is their experience with strap sales. And until you show them there's this whole other thing that they could be capitalizing on, they don't know any better. So like, I don't hate dealers for falling into that. It's really the fault of the strap manufacturers at large with lack of branding. And like I said earlier, just discontinued textiles from other industries. There's no real design point of view. It's just a straight line with 2 holes. I mean, it's, you know, there's no reason why the public at large would even buy into a brand identity with a strap, because there's no 2 straps look like they're a part of the same line until you look at Franklin and you see everything has the same minimum level of quality, refinedness, and in-tab shape. It's all very consistent. You can look down our entire catalog and it looks, any 2 straps look like the same people made it, which it plays into brand identity. So when you tap into that merchandising psychology, they can do so much for the product they thought they've seen it all with. And so, but the problem is getting them to trust you to experiment with it. And
100%.
And then thankfully in our situation, the hardest job is getting into the store, because we've never had, like, I have an open door policy. I say, look, man, it's a great talking point because it puts people at ease. And it's like, look, man, if you call me in 4 months and you're like X and X SKU just won't move. I wasn't comfortable about it to begin with. Definitely not comfortable about it now. Okay, send it back. Absolutely. Send it back. We'll credit your account. We'll send you something will turn through, something you have a sell-through history of, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, there is no risk. You're not stuck with $100,000 worth of Gibsons, okay? This is not the same thing. Do you know how many times I've had to live up to that? I can count on one hand in 15 years how many times I've had to take inventory back and credit their account. And actually, it's usually the opposite. It's like, man, I got all this cheap stuff that won't sell, and all your $80 straps blew right out the door. So it's usually the opposite problem. And so our hardest thing is getting it into the store and then getting the dealer to actually manage their inventory. Because I'll call 3 months down the road, 4 months down the road, and I'm like, hey, man, just checking on the Franklin inventory. And they're like, no, we're good on straps. And I was like, yeah, but how's your Franklin inventory? You don't say, hey, how are your, how are your Ibanez? And then he's like, we got humbuckers. We're okay. You know what I mean? Like that's not, what are you talking about? Like why is your brain even lumping all that together? It's not because they've been trained to sort of think of it as a commodity and not like a destination or a brand. And so I'll tell them, okay, well, just do me a favor and look at the rack and tell me how many have a Franklin hook. And they're looking at it and they're like, well, darn, I don't even see one. And I'm like, well, dude, I'm telling you, like, even once it gets down to like 2 dozen, your sales slow down because of the lack of options and branding. And so like really you need to have like 100 straps in stock. And then when it gets to 60, reorder the 40 and then just keep doing that over and over and over and over again. And you have a minimum level of inventory so people have a reason to browse, or else people aren't attracted to the display in general.
Oh man, we just ran into this exact scenario. Well, first of all, our balance 10s are the biggest sellers by far. And the amount of times I've walked into a store and they have no balance 10s.
Yeah. And they're oblivious to it probably.
Is absurd. And then, but furthermore, we had a dealer, this is the first time we've actually heard this in a while. Man, these aren't really moving for us. We're like, oh, let's look at what you got. Yeah. Oh, you only ordered 9s.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. You only had 9s. Well, a lot of people don't play 9s, first of all. Right. And second of all, if you take up one space on the rack, what does that even look like?
Or they look at it and they'll say, well, I have 10s from GHS. And it's like, yeah, what? Like that's literally like that. It's like saying, I don't need Porsches because I have plenty of 2-door Civics. Like what are you even saying? Like, that's not the same thing. Like they get this idea when you put it in the context of guitars. They get branding with guitars. Like you don't just stop buying single coils because you don't stop buying tellies, right? Because when you have a bunch of, nondescript single coils, like that's not like, you get that you have to have what happens when you sell out of seafoam green tellies? Well, you get on the horn and buy 6 more. I mean, they get this. They totally get it, just not in the context of accessories. And so and at the time when I was traveling, being 27, I'm 37 now, but it's a little bit better, but still most people don't want to hear, merchandising philosophy and retail theory, turn theory, from anyone, much less someone younger than them. I call it the powdered butt syndrome. If you're old enough to have powdered my butt, I don't want money advice. It's and it's true. But again, once you get it in, you can slowly sort of. My like top tier platinum dealers, the ones that make the most money. I'm wording that very specifically. The ones that profit the most off of what we do are the ones that don't even place POs anymore. They call me or they email me and they say, I need stuff, send it. Because I don't have a reason to stick you with stuff. First of all, we don't make anything that doesn't sell. That's not they're so used to the big guys with 3,000 SKUs and 100 bestsellers. So they're so used to dead inventory, just not moving. And so they know. And on top of that, why on earth would I spend 50 grand on a production for a quarter of one series for it not to turn through. Like, why would I, what are you talking about? Like, why I'm not going to design something, and put it on a credit line, because we have to build things and then market and then sell and then wait to be paid for it. So like everything that we operate on is revolving debt because it's done 6 months before we get a dollar. So it's which most manufacturers are. They're in the volume game 9 times out of 10. Now, because there's not 10,000 stores anymore, there's more like 4,000. A lot of us are selling direct to the public, so you can get some daily cash flow, thank God. But it's anyways, I got sidetracked. The best people just say, I need stuff. And I say, hey, can you just take a picture of your rack and then email that to me so I know not to double you up on some stuff? And I create an order for them, and they're like, dude, you make orders better than I could. Like and I'm like, oh, I wonder why. I sell straps for a living. Like, let's just all humble ourselves for a moment and just find out who does what. Like, I'm sorry, if I was starting a store today, I would call Chris at Stringjoy and I'll say, what's the best like universal startup stock of Stringjoy for a brand new store? And it like, what would set me up to where my reordering gets easier with time? And I guarantee you, he wouldn't even have to think twice. He would already know.
He'd tell you in 30 seconds.
He would already know everything because guess what? He does it every single day. And he sees what sells through and he knows what's popular. And I don't. I know what I like individually as a person, but I'll tell you straight up, man, if I designed straps based on what I personally used, we'd be bankrupt and we'd have 3 straps.
Oh, like, yeah. If it was just all what I use, we'd just sell only 13 and a half baritone
exactly.
sets, and then it would make no sense
Not
at
even
all.
your best selling 10s, right? Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And so it's one of those things is moving people. I started 10 years ago. I started stores 10 years ago with 4 models. They're like, look, I only need banjo straps right now. Can you just do that right now? And I'm like, yeah, sure, fine. And then slowly, like gruelingly slow, which you're realizing this takes a very long time to move these people from this bracket to then this bracket to then this bracket, and then to 15 years later land them in the platinum bracket where it's like, dude, I don't even care what you send me, just send it to me, because I've made them so much money. And they don't have boxes of unopened straps that don't sell. They know they're in good hands and their job is taken care of. And it's going to be, whatever they receive is the best for their situation. And so, but look, and understandably so. I'm not mad at dealers for having trust issues. Come on. There's a lot of crap out there, dude. But that's the struggle. That's the business we're in, is educating why you're different and why you matter and your legitimacy in the market and what you can do for their store. And then slowly but surely their sales, they're not idiots. Slowly but surely, their sales report will validate every single thing that you have told them. But they can't just take it on its face. So it takes a minute to get them there. But, once we're all in this together, okay, I only succeed if they're succeeding. So once enough time has gone by and they've heard me talk endlessly about our line, and then they can run reports and then see empirical data justifying everything I've said, and not everybody even gets there. The bulk, what's the rule? They say, what is it? 20% of your customers give you 80% of your business or whatever it is. That's true, in many ways. So, but moving more people over to that slowly but surely, with the whole world against us. I mean, we don't have the infrastructure of the biggest guys out there. So, but we still manage to make, 80 to 100,000 straps a year.
It's a lot of straps.
A lot of guitar straps. And, we're overseas now and those kinds of things. And, the Japanese, love American made products, and the Japanese are like some of the most, their guitar market is some of the most impressive. And and that's been going on forever. I mean, the 80s Japanese guy, I've got a 79 Yari behind me that I swear by. I mean, so we're trying to grow those markets. And then our little capo went through the ringer this year with production issues, but we're ironing that out, thankfully.
Good deal.
But yeah, the struggle is real in terms of gaining the trust of store buyers and so forth. But look, in our industry is uniquely sort of old school. So you have to sort of do both. You can do the, new school email blasts and phone calls and, eat clever emails and so forth. But to sprinkle a little physical visits in and trade shows and tailored attention to certain individuals goes a really long way, given, we're not selling washer and dryer sets here. The people involved with this are emotional, physical people. And so playing into that, it can be very helpful in selling your accessories.
That's one thing that I think gets lost in the world of people. I mean, we've seen it at NAMM and a million times at this point. They come up with an idea. Sometimes it really is a brilliant idea. Sometimes it's a solution looking for a problem.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
But sometimes it really is brilliant, and they think, and I understand this mentality. They think this is so clever and cool. Why wouldn't stores want to carry it? And they forget that it's not just about that, because the whole store is based around carrying cool things. The guitar's cool. Who doesn't want to go to a guitar store? Anybody listening to this podcast wants to go to a guitar store. Right. That's not the problem. Right. It's communicating what can your thing do for the store that it's not already doing. Carrying cool stuff is the bare minimum that a store has to do. Right. So trying to, one of our things that we try to communicate, and sometimes it resonates and sometimes it doesn't. It was like, listen, if you just, the demand's here. I know you may not understand that yet, but the demand is here. If you simply sell ours instead of one of this other ones that you've already explained to me doesn't sell anyway, you can pay your lease.
Yes, right.
And they don't think of it in those terms because that's never been what strings are for them, because typically they don't get a whole lot of love from the other manufacturers. So, or
if they do, it's not tailored to them. It's like a universal sort of catch-all love. Yeah.
Right. And it's not, it's more they carry them because they feel they have to.
Right, that's right.
More than they actually
and
want
routine.
To. So
yeah,
routine.
What you're
huge.
Doing is asking them to work more. I mean, that's, you know what I mean? Like, no one wants to be asked to work more. You have to, especially with just having faith that it's a good decision.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's frustrating sometimes, but it's also when you take two steps back and try to remove our own personal emotions out of it, because we are so passionate about all these things. It's like, I understand some of this. Yeah. Some of it I don't, admittedly. Some of it's like, you're just being silly.
100%. I mean, and I've got some of those too, which I'm sure you've heard. I can't count how many times over the years I opened up a store. They are gung-ho. They love it. And their first order doesn't come for 8 months after my visit. And and do you know how many times I have heard this excuse? And that is, yeah, I had to load the UPCs into the system.
Right. Dude.
What? So you didn't take 10 minutes of your day to put the UPCs and your cost into your product system, your POS system. So you waited 8 months to make a lot of money. I mean, not a lot. I mean, in the context of what they were doing with straps. Like we outturn everybody 3-1. It's not even close with straps. It's not even close. And I have actual data, real empirical data backing that up. In that we, when we're put up next to our biggest competitors, the largest guys, it's not even close. We outturn them 3-1. And so what you're essentially saying is that you're walking away from double the strap business.
Mm-hmm.
Because you didn't want to spend 10 minutes.
Yeah. Right. Especially because of what you were saying is nobody really goes to the store. I mean, I'm sure this happens once in a blue moon, but nobody really goes to the store to get
it doesn't even happen in a blue moon. Literally. No, no one's really doing that. Yeah.
So they do it because they're already there doing something
right.
else.
That's right.
And I can tell you for a fact that when I go into a store that carries Franklin, it's not just because I know who you are and we have this connection. I've literally looked at this because of the conversations that Scott and I have had about Franklin, and I can see all this in action. I go over and I'm like, well, these are the ones that my eye is drawn to, even if it said some other name on it.
Yeah.
If it said Bill's Strap Company, I'd be like, wow, look at these. These look interesting. And I want to go over, and they're the first ones that I touch. And then if I touch any of the ones that are
it's all physical.
It's like, I don't want that. I want this one. Oh yeah. Okay. It's a little bit more money, but I'm literally going to wear this on my back for hours.
Yeah. Yes. It's a great investment. Well, and not only that, I see little things like that. You know how often I've told dealers to put a body mirror up next to the strap wall. I mean, I hate to say it, but us guitar players are vain, my bro. And so we we love the outfits and the colors of the top wood, and you throw a cool personal. It's like it's the only thing fashionable, within the guitar business, really. Well,
outside of the instrument itself.
That's what I mean. Yeah, absolutely. It's and because we're toned down just enough to where we don't like outshine. We don't want to take over the visual of the instrument. We want to design something just cool enough, just aesthetic enough to complement the instrument perfectly. You don't want to be louder than the instrument or counterintuitive in that way. But like if you can, keep a timeless design perspective and yes, it's all very physical, and it's really hard to pontificate like all this theoretical, philosophy and so forth. It's like doing a TED talk and then it hits them. It's like, are we still talking about guitar straps? Like, why do you have so much to talk about in terms of guitar straps? And I'm just like, look, you're doing a lot. The thing is that you're just doing a lot of things wrong. And like, you don't walk into when's the last time you walked into like a Macy's and the Arizona jeans and the Levi's jeans, and the Wrangler jeans were all three piled up on one table and mixed in with each other like that? It's never happened because these people spend millions of dollars in educating themselves on retail theory and merchandising theory and the psychology of merchandising. So that's why we offer wooden fixtures to some dealers and so forth. But, at the very bare minimum, separate the lines, and maybe don't stock 6 brands, maybe stock 2 brands, maybe, stock the ones that you're getting extorted to stock, and then pick us up and then focus your actually being a dealer of a strap line, instead of like buying 12 models from 6 brands, because then you're not really not a dealer. You just have stuff, and then you're not representing a line, which actually plays into lower sales. It does. You have to you don't spend 120 grand to become a Fender dealer and then just buy Jaguars. Like, no, like that doesn't make any sense. So so they get it. It's just in accessories. It's hard for them to justify what they believe the time that it takes to actually like fine tune that. And again, I get it. They're open to the public. People are walking in all day. They've got things to do, which is also why we love placing their orders for them. As long as you tell me what you have in stock, I will double your strap business.
And then it's also true that like we didn't get into this because we went to business school or something. I think found a passion for that side of it later.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not the thing that attracted us to it.
Right.
The same thing goes for most of these retailers.
That's
in fact, when I was starting the podcast, I had friends and family sit me down and tell me, well, why don't you just start a guitar store instead? Because they didn't understand what a podcast was. And I was like, I understand why you are saying that, but also a guitar store is an extremely difficult business to make work in this day and age.
Yeah.
It's really hard. So that's the other side that we've kind of had some tongue-in-cheek jokes here, but the other side of it is a guitar store as a business is super challenging.
It's so hard. And my sympathies are with them because it's a struggle. At the end of the day, if they say I don't have, I'm sitting here talking about, well, spend 10 minutes to do that and do this. Well, they got to sell guitars. And they got to sell amps, and they got to sell microphones and whatever, the bigger ticket stuff.
And there's usually a couple people
That's
there.
right. That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I always have to preface these, some of my rants here in that I don't blame them. However, just like anything else in life, if you can create a routine around something, it will be beneficial. Especially if it's something that you usually don't treat that way. I'm just trying to make the case that we're the only brand that you can actually buy and track and stock like a guitar brand. And that's the case. It's making that case. And immediately people are skeptical when you're like, oh, you're the only one to do a thing in the strap brand. Yeah, I'm sure. And I'm like, well, I just so happen to, I think I'm correct. It's just sheer experience. I've looked at strap racks, thousands of strap racks, and I have seen what has absolutely failed, and I have seen what absolutely works. And it doesn't matter what town you're in. It doesn't matter. It's always in your display and how you track your inventory. And again, I don't blame them. They have enough to do. It's like the guy I was telling you the other day when you call and I say, how's your Franklin inventory? And he's like, I got straps. And it turns out he's like, dang, I guess I sold through all of it. And I'm like, well, really, man, 2 months ago, you should have caught that and restocked it, because how many could you have sold up until now? And you just missed out on all of that.
The turns matter.
It's everything with accessories. It's everything. Because if not, then you're just talking about, you're barely talking about your light bill for 1 month at the end of the year. If you're not participating in a turn through, it's pretty easy, man. Get one of 50 different Franklin Strap models. And then in 30 days, if it's down to 30, buy 20, but get 2 of those 20. And then just keep rolling that in that fashion until you're having to get 6, 7, 8 of one model and 2 models and 3, like the top 5 models, because you're missing out on those other 7 straps that could have sold, or maybe the one person would have got 2.
It turns into like if you focus and you're thinking about accessories a little more actively, it turns into the equivalent of, wow, I sold 5 to 20 more guitars this month.
100%.
On the face of it. It's like if you pay attention a little bit more than you already are, because everyone thinks about they're never not going to have a Squire Telly.
Right.
They're always going to have a Squire Telly in there. And what we're asking you to do is carry the cost equivalent of a Squire Telly.
Yeah.
That could completely change your cash flow.
Yeah. And that, you just nailed it, is that you don't need a sales guy sitting next to add on what you just said. The great thing about an actual strap brand like ours, not a line of unrelated stuff, is that you don't need explanation. You don't need a sales guy sitting next to the strap rack. It's very aesthetic and super subjective. So if you are merchandising correctly, that's your sales guy. So it takes very little effort. It's hands-off sales. It truly is. With the exception of maybe saying what you personally use or something like that. But it's usually not that conversation is usually not in the context of brands. It's usually in the context of function. So like a sales guy will say, well, I like a slippery fit to my shoulder. So you might want to, if you like that, you might want to look for material like this. That's not really, that's not a brand conversation. It's a functionality conversation, a construction conversation.
Right.
But with it's sort of Greg Bennett used to call it a sales ecosystem, a strap rack, like a well-stocked, well-branded strap rack. Like ours are these nice wooden fixtures. It's like our entire NAMM show with the bolts, hooks. Our booth fixtures are essentially what we send to stores, just half the width, and it's the fixture looks like the strap. I mean, that wood looks like nice leather. The curvature of the top wood looks like the shape and complements the shape of our end tab and things like that. It's all branded in this nice little package that was designed by the late great Greg Bennett to be an attractor, a magnet of the human eye. So here's an actual designer, an actual guitar designer that understands shapes, understands headstock shapes and bodies and everything that draws a human being into an aesthetically pleasing item. And he made a strap line around it. So if you have it well stocked, every line, every single line, every design perspective of every single thing that we do is correlated, and they're not a juxtaposition of each other. They don't, it's actually so well thought out that no one else making a strap has even thought about that kind of architecture that goes into the sort of psychology I'm talking about. It's these aesthetic things that act like a magnet, and you have those fixtures. And I mean, we could put a fixture in a town with 20,000 people in it and quadruple their strap business. I mean, it really doesn't matter where it is because it's human nature. We designed a line around human nature, which was the brilliance of Greg Bennett right there. And so, yeah, it's just, getting them to give me the opportunity to show them. And they have to care enough to first. And then they have to, and which is why I always say, we have an open credit system and so forth. So they're not stuck with inventory, but,
right. Yeah, you got to minimize the risk for them because they're already risking a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I don't know if you're a capo guy, but have you ever used our little glider? I got a couple of them here.
I've not. I've seen it, of course, but I've never used it.
It's an interesting little guy. So funny thing, this last year, Magenta is a large business, very large company, and they bought out the rubber mold company that we use. That we've used since the 80s to make these rollers. And they immediately were like, okay, we're just like any hedge fund type company that buys out a mom and pop. They're like, all right, well, we're only making molds for Nissan and everyone else can screw off, Right. So here, I went off and, it doubled our export in our first 2 years in charge and immediately lost the supply. We make them here in Nashville, Tennessee in terms of assembly and so forth, but we have to get these little rubber parts molded to the steel. And
right. Makes sense.
And so anyways, we finally, my partner just lived in their rear end all year, just every day. Are we on the table? You building today? You building today? Building today. I mean, we just got annoying until they were like, okay, make these dumb capos for these people. So,
right.
Anyway, so
sometimes it's what it takes.
Yeah. So we're finally, we got, I think we got a shipment of like 12,000 rollers the first week of December. So like for the last 6 weeks, we're still fulfilling POs from last January.
Wow.
But yeah, this thing is fantastic. It's, this top roller here has a composite radius. You can see how it curves right there. So it's uniquely designed to grab the extreme strings on the guitar and not, realistically, this should have been the original design for capos. It makes no sense that they're clamp style from the get-go. The physics are just all wrong. There's an offset amount of tension. It's a flat pad, whereas your finger is rounded. So
Right. And everybody knows that fretboards have a radius to them,
that's exactly
typically.
right. So the idea, so instead of, so they've made a clamp style thing, which by the way, thank God they didn't, or else I wouldn't have a brand. But, it's, and also there's tuning issues because as the string guy, the reason why capos pinch you out of tune every time you reposition is because when you put them on, it stretches the string. And then when you remove it, it contracts back in. And then when you put it back on, it stretches it again. And then you wonder why you're out of tune because you're constantly stretching your string. So this doesn't have to be removed in order to reposition. You can just roll it up. And so it's the only capo on the market that maintains your tuning after repositioning. And this particular rubber composition was specifically designed to not mark up the back of your neck like everything else. But
nice.
I love our little capo.
Yeah, I remember an ad with Greg in it where he was sliding it around while playing.
They're still running every day. Yeah, we try to do a few videos a year. There's only so much, it's one of those things I get all the time in the comment section. It's like, who's actually moving it around like that in 10 seconds? I'm like, well, nobody. I mean, nobody. But do you advertise a Ferrari in traffic? Yeah, I mean, you have to. I have T-3 seconds to grab your attention and maintain it. And if it took a minute before I repositioned it, it wouldn't be very entertaining now, would it? So the point is we move it around a lot because it's obvious that they're maintaining their tuning. So you're not going out of tune. So I'm sitting there for a minute long. I've modulated 18 times and not once did I have to tune. And that's the point of those type of ads. In terms of at the extreme, showing the full extreme of what you can do.
Yeah, people get really mad at weird things in this business for sure. Like,
dude,
it's very strange.
You can ask my partner. I directly blame the comment section of our ads with the uptick in my blood pressure.
Oh yeah, sure.
I mean, look, the funny thing is that it's always, if somebody loves the product, they're not going to go out of their way to like praise you in the comment section. They're just going to go enjoy your product. So it's, what's funny is that the comment sections, they don't even have the product, but they've got, some kind of an opinion.
But they have opinions
all kinds of opinions. Yeah. Or it's someone that got the product and they're like, well, this doesn't work. I can't roll it like that. And I'm like, bro, do you see an Ibanez RG commercial with Steve Vai? And then you say it's Ibanez's fault because you can't finger tap like Steve Vai. We have been rolling this for decades. We get it. We know how to do it. Like we have practiced this quite a bit. You have the same thing we have. You just have to kind of get the muscle memory down.
Yep.
And so forth. I mean, it took me a minute to get used to it, but once I did, it's an incredible, like, as we already said, I don't really play live anymore, but I'm in the studio. I track something every day. I try to, tinker. And, I will go out of my way to just record diamond chords one at a time and piece them together because of the tonality instead of getting a one take progression. It depends on what I'm doing, but a lot of, if it's not guitar dominated, there's a lot of value in open string strumming to thicken out a track, right? That's a very common thing. We all do it in the studio. And the tonality of the open strings on the Glider Capo crushes everything. It's just, it's because of the physics of its design and how it sort of mimics the nut of a guitar, with that crispy, sort of angelic harmonic content of an open string. It's just so much better than a bar finger or if you're in open tuning or whatever it is. But in the studio, I've got 3 of these laying around because I use it all the time. It's fantastic.
Very cool, man. Well, we've been going for a little while now, and I think I could talk to you all day. I have some other things I want to get into, but maybe we can slide over to Patreon and take care of that. What do you think?
I love it.
All right, cool. Well, I got some classic questions that I like to wrap these episodes up with. But before I do, I like to give the guests the opportunity to shout out anybody they want to shout out, say hi to their grandma, plug anything they want to plug. The floor is yours.
Well, of course,
now.
I have to shout out my my business partner, Greg Lancaster. He's, when Greg died, it was, I'll tell you, you run the company for, 13 years, and then your leader and mentor passes away, and you think, well, what's the difference? I've been running this thing for 13 years. What ownership's not going to be that big of a difference. It's a huge difference. It's way harder. So I couldn't have done this without him. So and then of course, shout out to all our dealer network and all our guys we work with every single day, because we would be absolutely nothing without our stores.
Nice. Very good. Very, very good. All right. First of the classic questions. Here we go. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
My favorite Boss pedal. Oh my goodness. Okay. Probably the specifically the DD7, because it was the first time they put a looping option on it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That might have been the 6. Now that I think about it.
I think it was the
DD6. It might have been forgive me, Boss. My buddy Chris at Boss is killing me right now. I'm sorry, buddy.
I love Boss. The DD6 is a good pull. Any of the Boss delays are a good pull. I love Boss so much.
Great. It's a great company, great people. I actually work closely with them all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. That's awesome. I did not know that. So much. You're a mystery man. Look at you.
It's a very incestuous industry. You're if you're in it long enough, and you know everybody really.
Well, that's also very true. I've discovered that within the first year. I was like, wow, this is a little bit more tight knit than I
we're
realized.
The biggest little industry. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's accurate. All right, final question. Here we go. What is your favorite kind of pizza?
Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. So the probably all right, De Portnoy. Let me turn on my De Portnoy. I like, what do they call old pepperoni? Yeah, have you ever heard that terminology?
I'm not sure.
It's not just pepperoni, but like old world pepperoni. I think they I think it's like
kind of the rougher cut,
it's thicker, it like curls up. And like the grease is sitting in the pit of it.
Yeah, they're smaller ones.
Yeah. Ones. You give me extra that on a nice New York style thin with a good undercarriage. That's the jam.
Yeah, I like that. You got a specific pizzeria?
Not really. I wouldn't say. Down here, we can't really compete with like the Northeast. Yeah.
It's tough.
It's just tough. Not, we're just amateurs down here. Yeah.
5 points, solid. I like 5 points. Yeah. And then Smith and Lentz, that brewery, has some really good pizza too. So if you want to check that out.
You know what? I know the brewery. I went there on New Year's Day, and I got the exact pizza I'm talking about. Yep. I have photo evidence. I'll show you. So that's actually really funny.
I believe
you said that, because I had to remember because that was the name. Some friends of mine and myself got a Airbnb with a rooftop so we can see the fireworks on New Year's Eve.
Nice.
And it's directly across the street. It's next to the barcade and all that right there. Yeah, man. Uh-huh. I was just there. That's funny.
That's my home. Nashville's my home away from home. So I'm
love
pretty familiar.
Your stuff. I dig it.
Yeah. We can talk hot chicken later.
All right. Now I'm going to get snobby. So yeah.
I like it. Yeah. I like it. All right. We'll slide over to Patreon. Sorry. Wow. My throat just collapsed. For Charlton, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. And of course, here's your reminder that this is primarily an audio show. So if this is the first time you found it, or you just kind of want to take it on the go a little easier, you can get it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, including tonemob.com. That's right, it's right there. Every episode is available on the website as well for your listening pleasure. And if you want more content, you can go to patreon.com/tonemob, where for $5 a month, you'll not only get ad-free episodes, you will also get the extra episodes that are published there every single week. And this time, it is 2 full hours with Charlton. So check that out if you'd like. We talk a lot of business, we talk a lot of music. It's really good stuff. I think you're gonna like it. And I do appreciate you getting to this point in the video. I really do. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'll talk to you on the internet very, very soon.